Welcome to week 4, TE 873 students. This week we begin what Readling terms the nuts and bolts of our textbook, and it's the nuts and bolts of reference service as well. We'll be looking at particular reference sources. Now, last week we looked at reference selection tools. This week we actually look at the sources. Librarians just need to know this stuff in order to best serve our patrons, and if we don't know it, who's going to know it? We're the ones that need to take it on our shoulders. We'll learn these reference sources, and then we are the portals, we're the door to the rest of our patrons. We'll be looking in depth at many types of reference sources, covering 2 or more basic types each week for the next 3 weeks. You'll be evaluating 2 reference sources, one for each chapter each week. This week we're covering Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. In your posting, please 1. Use the evaluation criteria from the text to evaluate each source. Now this is different for each chapter. The evaluation criteria is usually featured in a handy-dandy little table in each chapter. And 2. Describe how useful you think the reference source would be for students and how they would use it at your school library. Be sure to use quotes and paraphrases from the text and the sources to support your posting, and then cite them as you have been doing. Because reviewing a variety of sources is the best interest of all the students in this class, only 2 people may cover the same reference source on the discussion board. So be sure to check what was covered before you look up sources for yourself. Also, be sure to include the titles of your sources in your heading to make it easy for people to check in your group. Oh yes, and I changed the groups beginning this week and for the next few weeks. The groups will now be people with last names starting with A through D, E through O, and P through Z. The groups were even when I set them up, but then we had a couple more people register that joined the middle group, so what I actually did is just take the people whose last names start with P and put them into the last group. So that means Denise Pedersen and Julie Peterson will now go into the last group. That's basically all the changes. A word about finding resources. I'm supposing some of you are getting your sources from your own library media center, but others are going to the public library or another library to get them. Of course, there's great resources on the internet as well, and those are certainly usable for these assignments. One tip is to use the databases and reference sources that are supplied by our UNK library. Well, here's what you do. You go to the first page of the library, and that's the library webpage. I've got the link in the written announcements if you want to go straight there. Then go to Research Tools, and then you'll be able to find a whole bunch of them there that you can use for these assignments. And you can probably use them for other reasons too. Another good source is Nebraska Access. A lot of these subscription sources that you've been looking at are available there. And I've got that web address in the announcements. And those of you outside of Nebraska, never fear, you can use them as well. Public libraries often have wonderful free databases and access to online reference sources. Usually that just requires the library card number from the library where you belong. So check out your public library too. By the way, if you find reference sources that you think would fit the topic of the week and it's not listed in the text, you can go ahead and review it. That'll be fine. We'll all learn something new that way. A word about thoroughness. I am looking for thoroughness in your postings about the reference sources you are evaluating. Please answer all of the questions and cover all of the areas mentioned in the Readling tables as a point of criteria for that type of source. I'm also looking for quotes and paraphrases from the source and the textbook that prove your points. Remember, you're going to be the eyes and the ears for the rest of the class or the rest of your group. And they're doing that for you too. Good coverage should make your reference resources purchase proposal project due October 10th that much easier. Besides, it's a pain to go back and find the information you're missing, so it's a good idea to get everything you need the first time around. So, have a great week. I look forward to reading your postings.